If I had told any of you, actually, if anyone had told me at any point during that lockout that the Penguins' best move of the offseason, the extended offseason, would have been to keep Paul Martin rather than to trade him or even to release him. If that would have been their best move, their smartest move, Ray Shiro's, we all would have been considered nuts. And rightly so. Let's not revise history here. Paul Martin was not a good player for the Penguins last season. He wasn't a good player for the Penguins the season before that. Right now, he's their best defenseman. He's one of their very best players. He will be our special guest on today's show. That'll be coming up in around 1:15. We're happy to have him on. Happy to give him his credit. He's certainly taken his lumps on this show, in my columns, and pretty much everywhere else around town. You need to step up and give credit to a guy when it's deserved. We're also going to have on the show something a little bit different later on. We're going to check in with Ralph Polk of the Trib. He's down at Daytona 500 covering. He's an auto racing nut. You probably know Ralph best from being part of our Steelers team coverage. We're going to be talking to him about Danica Patrick winning the pole this weekend and whatever else Ralph wants to talk about for 10 minutes that makes me sound like I can actually carry on a conversation about auto racing. I'm going to give it a shot. Later after that, we're, of course, going to have our weekly segment with Suck Meter. We're also going to be taking your phone calls at 412-320-7925. And your emails you can send at any point in the show at sportstalk@tribweb.com. What I want to talk about before we get into any of that is defense. When you look at this Penguins team right now, as they're constituted, the fact that they've won 3 in a row, they beat Ottawa, they won up at Winnipeg, won up at Buffalo. They're a team right now that is starting to get it together defensively. And by that, I'm not just talking about the 6 guys, 7 guys on the blue line. I'm not just talking about the fact that Marc-Andre Fleury is playing really well in goal. Maybe a little bit too much, but that's a subject of tomorrow's column in the Trib, so I don't want to talk too much about that. They're playing well as a team right now defensively. I just came back from Consol Energy Center where the Penguins practice and was talking to Brooks Orpik about this. And his thought on this is that the Penguins basically decided about a week or two into the season when things started looking a little bit frazzled, when they started looking not quite like the Philadelphia playoff series. Nothing could look that bad. But they made up their minds that they were going to become a tighter unit. And by that, if you understand the way their system works, that means that they'll bring back 5 guys into the defensive zone. They won't break out until they have certain possession. They won't have forwards cheating out. They'll forecheck hard as a unit. They consider that to be part of their defensive play. They've been much better in that regard. A guy like James Neal leading the way, excuse me, as a back checker, that it should be motivation and is, in most cases, enough for these guys to come back and work hard. A guy like Craig Adams, forgetting the 2 goals that he scored in Winnipeg the other night, the example that he sets out there, it looks like it can be a good enough defensive team in the playoffs. Are they there yet? No. Are they going to be good enough to win a Stanley Cup with this group of defensive forwards and this group of defensemen? I don't know. Honestly, don't know. I'm not nuts about Joe Vitale, Tyler Kennedy, those guys as your bottoms, being part of your bottom 6 forwards. I wouldn't mind seeing the Penguins try to find a way to get bigger, faster, stronger, tougher on those lines and basically throw other teams out of whack when you face them, because on one hand you'll go over the boards with the Sidney Crosby line, the next you'll go out there with a bunch of great big checkers who are bashing you all over the place, and then right after that put Evgeny Malkin out there. That, to me, is a much more attractive mix, potentially, than what they have right now. The defensive core, you know, there are exactly 30 teams in the NHL that would like to be better with their defensive six, and I don't doubt that the Penguins are one of them. I like what they're doing with the top four. Matt Niskanen's been terrific. Imagine that he was a throw-in in that trade. But you're still looking at 5 and 6 are rotating Simon Despres, Robert Bortuzzo, Derek Engelland. If the Penguins can add somewhere at the deadline, that to me is where you look. You're looking for a way to bolster that group. And again, I'm thinking of size and I'm thinking of toughness. That's not a knock on the Penguins' level of toughness. I have no doubt that, you know, we've seen what Tanner Glass can do when he drops the mitts. We've seen in the past what Matt Cook can do, what Matt Cook can still do. He can still deliver a body check without getting suspended. I just think that this team could stand to get a little bit bigger, a little bit stronger. I look at, I'll tell you where I started thinking about this. It was up in Winnipeg watching the Jets at the morning skate, and by no stretch of the imagination are the Jets the NHL's role model for where a team should be right now, but they are very big. And I was looking at all that size that they had with a couple of guys who could move a little bit and thinking to myself, that's where you'd want the Penguins to get for the playoffs, because you know you have the rest of the stuff. You know you have the scoring. You know you have the skill. All the agonizing that goes on about who should play on a second line and, you know, why isn't Bo Bennett being used up there? And, well, at least up until the last couple of games, when are you going to get the Sidney Crosby line going at even strength? Those things will sort themselves out. The power play will sort itself out. It pretty much already has. But these other things, these are the areas where you address when you're looking at becoming a championship team. I think they can get a little bit bigger, a little bit tougher, and a little bit more effective in front of their own net. And yeah, they could have split up the goaltending a little bit better, but again, that's going to be tomorrow's column. When we come back,